Welcome back, everyone. I'm Diabolic Gamer, and look, it's Pathfinder content. Isn't that rare? Yes, today we're going to be talking about Pathfinder 2e's new Monster Core, which is the remaster version of some of the monsters that it shared with D&D due to the whole OGL debacle. Tons of videos out there on that. I'm not going to necessarily explain it, but one of the coolest things about this is that Paizo has decided to go away from the chromatic and metallic dragons and have now decided to have their own unique brand of dragons. Now, to be fair, Paizo's already done this before. They have a lot of unique dragons to themselves, but they figured now is a really good time to, well, writing out the chromatic and metallic dragons from the overall lore to add dragons unique and very, very cool, and also somewhat based on prior dragons, like the metallic and chromatic kinds, only now more wholly unique to their anatomy. And one of the coolest things they did in this overall chapter is release not only just the idea of new dragons, but each dragon has a tradition it is connected to. So, for instance, the Adamanting Dragon that's here behind me, which I'll talk about here in a moment, is a primal dragon. Primal dragons tend to be more bestial, be more elemental in variety and form. And so there are the tradition primal dragons, and then there's also family styles of dragons. So, for instance, the Adamantine is a sky metal dragon, which means that in the future we're likely to get a mithril dragon, or they changed mithril. What was it? Which is very silly because that's Tolkien, but I can't remember. Adamantine, and I think it's like sky metal, or it's not sky metal, but like dawn metal. I think it's like dawn metal or dawn silver, I think is one of the ones they've done. I can't remember at the time. Not super important. It's not in the book. Adamantine is in the book, and it's a very, very cool dragon. So all those will be the metal or earth dragons. And then we'll have like the horns dragon, which is another really cool one coming up. That is the bestial dragons. And so we'll have very beast-like dragons, presumably, in the future. That's all super cool. And in addition to introducing the concept of dragon traditions and dragon families, now they also have a little blurb that will talk about one dragon in the world of Galarian, what it's currently doing, and like a little bit about the dragon and its wants and needs, so that you can throw them into your story, which I think this is all really good. But that's enough of the preamble. Let's go ahead and get on with the video. Starting off, we have the Adamanting Dragon. Now, this is a very cool picture. It looks a lot better than the one on the cover art because now we can see more of its actual design. You can see this dragon is covered in stony-like plates that are actually adamantine metal, which is very, very cool. I also really like the club tail it has down here. I think that's a super underused aspect for dragons, their long whipping tail. I mean, of course, many dragons have, tail attacks and whipping tails, but having a club on the end of them is devastating. And this dragon is bulky. Now, while many dragons do have some kind of resistance to something or another, this particular dragon just has straight up physical resistance 10 at its young phase to anything that is, well, physical except for adamantine, or I think any other sky metals. Yeah, it says except adamantine. So, that being the case, this is a very hard to kill dragon for your marshals. This is kind of an anti-martial dragon, and there will be an anti-magic dragon, so it all really makes sense. This is a pretty rough dragon to go up against, honestly. Now, while not necessarily one of the strongest dragons starting out, it is still a very cool dragon. Some of its features I really like is like the reaction it innately has resilient form, where if it gets a critical, as a reaction, it can roll a DC 17 flat check to make that critical into a normal hit. Now, a DC 17 is like a 15% chance. Let's see, 17, 18, 19, 20, sorry, 20% chance, which is not small. I think I would have preferred a straight up like 25% chance or something like that, just because I feel like it's a dragon. It deserves to have a better overall resistance. But regardless, you're going to have a rough time with this one. Not only that, but this is one of the few dragons that actually does things like knocking enemies prone or grabbing them with its claw or jaw attacks respectfully. And this dragon can swallow you whole, which is not going to be fun. And trying to cut someone out of a Adamanting dragon, I would imagine, is incredibly difficult. This is one of also the primary burrowing dragons, though it's not the only dragon that has a burrow speed. And I think one of the more horrifying things about this dragon is it's almost as fast burrowing as it is walking, but its fly speed is still insane, as dragons traditionally have, having a 90-foot fly speed as a young dragon, which makes this thing terrifying at low levels. So that being the case, it's a pretty rough dragon to get through. It also has the ability to just tunnel through stone at a speed a little bit slower than its normal speed. And it also has an ability called Burrowing Pounce. Now, Burrowing Pounce is not a very great ability in my mind. Its major feature is if the dragon's already, it's its initiation attack, essentially. It spends three actions to burrow, fly out, and land next to someone and hit them. And if they hit them, they knock that target prone. That's very cool and all that, but it's three actions to do what amounts to three actions. And there's not a lot of efficiency other than the fact that the enemy is just automatically knocked prone rather than being, tripped. Other than that, it's really cool. Its breath attack is also just, it spews boulders at people. Yeah, it's just a straight up earth dragon. It just hacks up boulders at people. And it has throw rock, which is a giant ability, which I just imagine is, it just hawks a loogie of stone at people, knocking them out. It's really, really fun. The Adamanting Dragon is really cool, and it's such a strong start to the dragons here in this book. Next up is the Conspirator Dragon, which looks it's just a flesh dragon. This is such a weird dragon, and the word that comes to my mind is scrungly, even though I know what a scrungly is. This looks like a scrungly dragon. Like, I'm sure you know what I mean. I do love the wing detail that has kind of hand-like appendages at the end of its wings. That's something that's really cool and not universal in all the dragons they have here. This is one of the occult family of dragons, and occult dragons just tend to be really weird, which is exactly what this is. The occult dragon is not the occult dragon. The Conspirator Dragon is just a nuisance. Its big thing is it can create a flesh suit. It doesn't use magic to appear as a humanoid. It uses magic to create a flesh suit, and then it squeezes its whole body into a humanoid-sized flesh suit. It squeezes its body. The whole dragon's body compresses to fit in the flesh suit. It's so weird. Even and this actually is reflected in its reaction. Each of the dragons get a kind of unique reaction. This one's is called its retract body, and as a reaction, it retracts a part of its body that's currently being hit by a critical hit, and it can increase its AC by 2 against a triggering attack. So this potentially can just prevent it from being a critical if it is, if it's not a nat 20. Oh, I'm sorry. It also works when it's hit as well. So it can actually just retract away from your weapon when you try to hit it at such a speed that even though it's a large creature at its young phase, it can just away from you, which is so weird. I absolutely love it. Along with its ability, Conjure Disguise, which I said before, creates... Oh yeah, also something about this flesh suit as well. It's not a detectable magical effect. So this is essentially a disguise that is a disguise so good it can't even trigger magical effects, as it just is a created flesh suit with such minimal mana that or aether or whatever you use in your game, that it doesn't trigger any kind of magic sense, which makes that horrifying for this dragon. In addition, it can detonate its flesh suit. Also, when it gets critical in its flesh suit, it also detonates its body. And when it detonates the disguise, it essentially just explodes out of it. All the people immediately adjacent to the target are covered in its flesh and dazed for a moment on a reflex saving throw, I believe. Yes, basic reflex saving throw. They also take 96 bludgeoning damage from the flesh hitting them at such a high speed. And then the dragon expands, pushing everyone out of its space. That's great. Now, when you critical it and activate it that way, though, you do get one level of success better. So if you do find a bad Conspirator Dragon, of course, you want to make sure you destroy its flesh shoot first before it gets the chance to detonate it, because otherwise you're going to have a much harder time. So a very fun ability and a very fun dragon. Though some of its unique features is, one, it can transform with 3 actions rather than, I think, like 10 minutes, which is what it normally needs to transform, to make a temporary disguise, but it only lasts a minute, and then afterwards it leaves flesh behind that indicates a Conspirator Dragon's nearby. I don't know how often that's really gonna come up, but you definitely can do so. And also this like rush transformation, I think it's called rush. Yeah, rush transformation is it's not as good. It doesn't get a bonus to deceive people as to say it's not a dragon in this form. It still has an insanely high deception. So, it's like you're fighting a king of a country and he turns into a dragon, and suddenly, like, you hear guards coming in, and suddenly, bam, he transforms back into his self and, like, dons his regalia. And when they come, and he's like, take him away, quick, quick. They're trying to attack me, and runs while, like, everyone is attacking the players. That's one of the instances I can see its use. This dragon is also actually quite a nuisance in combat. While it definitely doesn't want to be in combat as much as possible, it is a very capable fighter, as its breath attack is actually a smoke attack. Now, the smoke itself is like a poisonous mist. It does 7d6 at this level poison damage, but also creates a mist that it can hide in. And this dragon has sneak attack. So if it ever catches anyone off guard, they are taking extra damage from dragon strikes, which is really cool. And while it's not the same as our good friend Adamanting Dragon here, with the ability to knock enemies around with its claws or grab them with its bite, it just does a lot of damage. And it is one of the weaker dragons stat wise. It has a lower essentially level when at its lower ranks. This dragon is, I feel, one of the more scary dragons to kind of deal with, not because also it's just flesh horror, but also because it is just a conniving, very manipulative dragon that also has access. Each dragon has innate spells, and of course there's also spellcaster dragon variants that you can find in the sidebars on the page. This particular dragon has something like manipulate memories, or modify memories is what it's called now. Rewrite memory is what it's been changed to now, which means that even if someone does see it, it can just rewrite their memory, which is terrifying. And it has a bunch of other cool magic that goes along these lines. It is a very terrifying dragon, but it's incredibly cool. Next up is the Diabolic Dragon, the strongest dragon currently in this book, as each of its levels is higher than any of the other levels of dragons in the game, and it is a beast. Now, I actually really like the lore behind the Diabolic Dragons, because in the lore for them is there's theories that they are actually chunks of hell that have broken free and gained a sentience. All Diabolic Dragons are, by their nature, furthering hell's desires as they do their things, though each of them might do it in a different way. And that's really cool. I really like the idea, and this thing looks like a piece of hell has been ripped from the very plane of existence and given malicious form. It's very, very cool. Now, this dragon does have smoke vision, so its use of hellfire is going to be very beneficial and make it very scary to deal with for the players. And its reaction is Hell's Sting, as just the very act of attacking the dragon invokes Hell's Rancor, and it's a basic save against 6d6 at its young stage mental damage will save, and that's terrifying. What's equally terrifying is holy creatures, or any creature that has a holy trait, take a degree of success worse against this. So why this is horrifying, why this is one of probably the more powerful reactions in the game, it's almost guaranteed to do damage. I mean, their saves are going to be really high, and unless you just are very like willful, or you're just higher level than the dragon in question, you're going to take some damage when you attack this dragon, which is really, really bad, honestly. And in addition to this, this is the only dragon currently in this book that has reactive strike. So yeah, moving and positioning around this dragon is also a perilous affair, though obviously it can only take one reaction at a time. So there's some counterplays I can definitely see into doing this, but this is a terrifying dragon, especially for casters, because its massive reach plus reactive strike means even casting spells is not necessarily safe. Now, I mentioned Diabolic or Hellfire earlier. It has Diabolic Fire as a feature, and this is terrifying because what it does is any fire feature it creates from a spell, breath, or whatever also does spirit damage if your character, or it doesn't also do it, but does spirit damage instead if the GM judges that the spirit damage would be more effective than the fire damage. So even creatures that are fire resistant or immune are not immune to this creature's fire, as it will just do spirit damage instead. The only thing this creature's breath or any of its abilities doesn't work on is like a construct that is fire resistant. So that's what its biggest weakness is overall. And again, this like also similar to the Adamanting Dragon, I should mention that its claw attacks and its, I think, tail attack. Yeah, its claw attacks actually can grab, and its tail attack can knock you down. So that being the case, this is a very dangerous dragon. It's got some of the best stats of any of the dragons. You're guaranteed to take damage against it. It is just not a good time fighting it. Its Hellfire Blast is also one of the most dangerous, being 12d6 at early levels. So yeah, this is a very dangerous dragon, and you don't want to go up against it if you absolutely don't have to. That makes it really cool, and I really do like the idea of dragons being a threat yet again, and the Diabolic definitely identifies as a threat. Following up the other divine dragon, if you didn't know Diabolic Dragon was a divine dragon, we also have the Imperial Dragon. Not Imperial as in like a regime or a government style, but Imperial with a Y, representative of, holy entities, essentially. We have this holy dragon. I do also love its clover tail, and it has a halo, and that halo is mechanically significant, which is very cool. Now, stronger than some dragons, but not as strong as the Diabolic Dragon, the Imperial Dragon is a support dragon, also just being a very devastating dragon in its own right. This dragon doesn't even have a fear presence like every other dragon does. Instead, it has its inspiring presence, which gives all of its allies, anyone really, it can decide who, a +1 on skill checks and saves while they're within a 20-foot emanation of the dragon. And not only that, but this aura does different things depending on some of the dragon's other abilities, and the dragon can exclude people from certain uses of the abilities, meaning that its aura can be offensive as well as supportive, as the dragon gets free reign to choose who benefits from or who gets affected by any of its abilities, which is really cool. A very fun set of features, and something I hope they bring to classes in the future, is I really do like that duality in the mechanics. Its reaction is probably one of the better reactions in my opinion, just because its reaction, which is called Divine Deflection, is similar to the Champion ability, except it can only use on itself, obviously, and it just gives it 10 resistance to all damage types from an attack that is critically hitting it, which means against players, if players are fighting it, this is actually really devastating, because a lot of the ways to get more power in the game is use weapon runes that give extra types of damage, like a flame room, for instance. This dragon will negate a large portion of your additional runes of damage and your straight up weapon damage, meaning that critting this dragon is not going to actually net a lot of damage. And well, the Adamanting Dragon has like a 20% chance of just not being crit. This one, if it is crit, just will reduce a lot of different damage types, which is very potent and much more, I think, usable than the Adamanting Dragons. Now, a really cool thing, I did mention the halo before. The dragon can actually launch its halo in any square within 90 feet, and it stays there, and the halo produces the same aura that the dragon had before. And the dragon can maintain this halo at any distance and then recall it just like that. I get a very interesting image. The dragon drops the halo, is flying away to go do something else, and then after some time, it like digitally or like light beam shoots off in a direction and appears over its head in an instance. That's really cool imagery, and it allows the dragon to aid while also being able to do other actions as well, not forcing itself to be near allies. But this also has other benefits to it as well. As the Imperial Dragon gets the Halo Pulse ability, which when and its young form gives two effects, either repulsion, which on a DC 29 fort save, the target is pushed out of the aura, or restoration, each creature gets 5d8 hit points when it uses this feature. And this feature is only 2 actions, but it can't do it again for another d4 rounds. So again, this allows the dragon to launch its halo, and then it could push all enemies out of the aura range, which is really cool and could create a lot of space. Very interesting play effects, and this gets better as the dragon gets older. As not only do the effects get stronger, but when it reaches its ancient form, it also has a restriction function, think Sun Wukong, only in an area, and it's a DC 41, obviously high level, will save, or the target is slowed 1 or slowed 2 on a critical fail, as long as they remain in the aura. Regardless, the creature then becomes immune afterwards, but for a minute afterwards, but that is very devastating. This dragon's breath effect also is very simple, but it's also very good. It's just spirit damage. It's spirit damage, and it does have the holy trait, so it does extra damage typically against unholy creatures. It does a 98, which is one of the highest at the young dragon form anyway, and it's based on a reflex saving throw. So overall, this dragon is very, very good at what it does, which is it can be a shield or a sword as necessary. I really like the Imperial Dragons. I think they're a very interesting take on this and very counter to the Diabolic Dragons, who are purely offensive. Next up, we have an Arcane Dragon, this one being the Fortune Dragon. And this one's really cool because unlike a lot of other dragon hordes, like dragons still hoard treasure, that's still kind of their thing. This dragon does it because it only makes it stronger, and that's terrifying. Look at the tail. Look how the tail becomes coated in a variety of like scales and gold plating. That's really, really cool, but it also does some extra stuff with it. This is also one of the few dragons that I feel like you just use its spellcaster version more than the normal version, because all of its abilities is pretty much the use of its spontaneous magic casting. So this dragon is a spontaneous caster, has a bunch of spells, and this plays into a lot of its features because its main thing is using magic and then using its features to get access to that magic back. One of the such features is its reaction, which is capture spell, where as long as it succeeds or crit succeeds a spell, it attempts to counteract the spell. If it counteracts the spell, nothing happens, and it restores the use of some of its spontaneous magic. That's devastating and makes this dragon incredibly dangerous against spellcasters, as there's just a chance that your spell doesn't work on this thing, and it already innately has a save versus all arcane spells, as most dragons do have just innate resistance against magic of its tradition. This is just terrifying for any wizards or, arcane sorcerers. And while its melees are not necessarily as dangerous as some of the other dragons, not being nearly as strong necessarily as the Diabolic Dragon, a lot of its damage just does innate force damage, which is very hard to resist, and in fact, mostly unresistible, meaning that its hits are just hurting you, and that's terrifying. Not only is it just so anti-caster, but its breath weapon is even even worse, as its disruptive breath, as you can imagine what it might do, actually doesn't cancel magic effects, but it does force damage on a reflex save. And if you are hit, or if you fail or crit fail, if you fail, you become stupefied 1, and crit fail, you become stupefied 2. For a minute. For a minute. It's not 1 for a round, 2 for a minute. It's 1 or 2 for a minute. That's terrifying. This is really not a good dragon for any kind of spellcasters. And its treasure hoard, as I mentioned before, plays a part in its features as well. When you first fight the dragon, it has a bunch of gold and treasure on it, and it can share the wealth, which by that I mean it can use an action to shake itself off, pelting surrounding areas. What's the zones exactly? It pelts a 30-foot emanation. There's big creatures. That's a huge emanation with a DC 29 at base level. Reflex saving throw, or the creatures take 6d10 bludgeoning damage, which is that's a lot. That's a huge area attack, and that's just it shaking its wealth off and pelting you with it. Now, I imagine this is also a terrifying dragon for GMs, mostly because you're like, oh great, now I need to I need to figure out what all this wealth is that it's shaking off and pelting the players with. Also, this is a dragon you don't want to fight near its horde because it has so many horde abilities. Well, so many. It has 2 horde abilities, which is unique amongst the dragons. First of all, it has its treasure dive. It dives into its treasure, Scrooge McDuck style, covers itself back up, meaning it can share the wealth again. But in addition to this, it can restore some of those spontaneous spell slots. So yeah, if you're fighting it near its horde, the dragon just gets the ability to refresh its horde as necessary, or its spell slots as necessary. That's crazy. And in its ancient form, it can just drain the treasure, spending a singular action to drain the treasure to get the spell slots back, rather than spending 2 actions to do the treasure dive. So yeah, this is a mighty terrifying dragon, especially for casters, but honestly, it's really cool, and it's going to be slinging all kinds of spells while you're fighting it. This is going to be a really, really fun dragon to use in games. Next up, we have the Horned Dragon. As I mentioned before, this is a primal dragon in a more bestial line of dragons, and this one is also a nuisance. Now, this is the foresty forest dragon. It's not Pathfinder still has the Forest Dragon, and what I know, they're keeping the Forest Dragon. But this is a dragon you just don't want to fight in a forest because it is a very dangerous foe, not only having some of the best brute force amongst the dragons, but also some of the most terrifying abilities. This is a dragon that makes it incredibly hard to get away with its long snaking tail. It has the twisting tail reaction, which is essentially react to strike, only against movement. This is at a -2, but if it hits, the action is disrupted. If it hits, not if it crits. So if you're trying to get away, this dragon can just whip you, tripping you. You get up, but you pretty much didn't go anywhere with your move action. That's horrifying. This thing makes it incredibly difficult to get away. And its horn that it has on its face there has a lot of damage. It has one of the highest just base damages of dragon attacks. Doesn't add anything on top, so I don't think it's actually the most dangerous. But like, it does d12s of damage as it gets bigger. And on top of that, it has a ability called Impaling Charge, where for 2 actions, it runs up and tries to impale a target on its horn. And if the strike is a success, you're just impaled on its horn and grabbed. It's terrifying, and it doesn't need to do anything to keep you there. So it doesn't need to keep using actions to keep grappling you. There's no check. Like, for if you're unfamiliar with Monster Core or the new changes to the game, monsters that now have any knockdown grapple abilities when they hit, they spend an extra action to attempt to grapple you, but they don't increase their multi-attack, nor does it count towards their multi-attack penalty. But they still need to make a check to attempt to essentially grab you, unlike before when it was just kind of a permanent thing. Or I don't even think they need to spend action anymore. I just looked it up and I've already forgotten. This one, though, it doesn't matter. When it impales you, you're just grabbed. There's nothing you can do, which besides try to escape, which is actually pretty hard because it's a dragon. In addition, it has forest passage, which is essentially it can move through any kind of plant life. But if it's any kind of plants, trees, vines, or whatever, it doesn't impede its movement, even if it's magical. So even if you're using some kind of magical effect, as long as it's plant or tree related, it can easily get through it. Now, it has a poison breath ability, which is pretty okay. Early level, it's not anything too crazy. It is 96 on a fortitude saving throw, not too bad. But when it gets up to its ancient form, it gets miasma. So after it uses its breath weapon, it creates a 20-foot miasma around it that any creature that ends its turn in the miasma will need to make a 37 basic fortitude, which is not a lot for an endgame effect. Honestly, level 17, that seems kind of low. Or they take 4d6 poison damage. And any creature in the miasma, which is the dragon always, is treated as being concealed. And this dragon can see through this concealment. So after it uses its breath weapon, it becomes concealed, meaning there's just a flat chance you can miss it. And it can see you, so you don't even get the benefits of it. And it's going to want to be up on you. And if you're impaled on its horn, you're just going to choke to death because you can't get away probably because it's a dragon. And trying to overpower a dragon to escape is incredibly hard. So overall, the horned dragon is very cool. I really like it. It's an interesting plant beast-esque kind of dragon. I really like the blending of the concepts, and I think this one is just a really cool idea for a dragon. We're coming up here on the last couple dragons, so if you've gotten this far in the video, I do recommend subscribing. It really helps out the channel, and liking the video so that other people get more of a chance to see it. I get Paizo material a little bit earlier than most, so I get the chance to show it off to people. And this is a great channel to be if you like all things tabletop as well. So let's go ahead and talk about the Mirage Dragon. This is an arcane dragon. And this is I really love the design. It looks devious. I love the iridescent scale design, the use of magic, all really, really cool things. And I love the color design overall. Now, this does have one of the more annoying, I think, reactions in the game. As a reaction, it scintillates the scales and attempts to essentially blind someone about to strike it. So before they're struck, they can trigger this reaction, and they gain concealment, meaning there's just a flat chance to miss the dragon on a hit. Now, compared to the Adamanting Dragon, I actually like this one a little bit more. While Adamanting Dragon has the ability to reduce crits, that's on a really high DC flat check. And while this one is slightly better as far as just the chance to straight up miss the dragon, it also just applies whenever they're about to be attacked. So I feel like overall the Mirage Dragon is just better at avoiding damage, ironically, over the Adamanting Dragon. While the Adamanting Dragon does just reduce flat damage on physical attacks, this one just doesn't get hit, so I guess skill issue, you know? Now, being an arcane dragon, it also just has a higher emphasis on its innate spells, a lot of them being invisibility, illusion type spells to trick its foes. And honestly, amongst the dragons, it doesn't have a lot going on for it as far as overall features. And that's probably because it's just really kitted out to do exactly what it does really well, which is hide, trick, or elude enemies as much as possible with its innate spells, its scintillating scales, and it has hallucinatory breath, which is, you guessed it, a very bad breath effect if you let it hit you. Now, this is a 30-foot cone breath attack, and it does not a lot of damage, 7d6 mental damage, which is, this is also one of the lower level dragons, I believe, starting out. Yeah, one of the lower level ones starting out. But being a will save, if you fail, you're confused, one, for one round, or for a minute if you critically fail. Confused is a very terrible condition, and it means that you're just not in control of some of your character's actions. That's real rough. Now, when you do get affected by the breath, you do become immune to its effects, after for an hour, but you don't become immune if you succeed the check. So if it breathes on you again, there's a chance you just might get confused. That is terrifying. And in addition to all this, it has sneak attack, which means it just does extra damage with its strikes and abilities, and it's really good at making targets off guard because it can turn invisible or blind you or do all kinds of things, meaning that this dragon is just really efficient. It doesn't have a lot of abilities, probably the least abilities of any of the other dragons, but in turn, it's so efficient at what it does that it really doesn't need that much more going for it. Now, as it gets older, it does get stronger, and this is one of the more, I think, progressive dragon builds, as a lot of dragons get everything at young and then get something new at ancient. This one gets stuff at adult, so when it becomes an adult, it gets captivating display, which you can probably guess, once per 10 minutes for a singular action. What it does is on a DC 33 will save, in a 30-foot emanation, if you fail to save, you become dazzled and slowed 1 or slowed 2 on a crit fail, and then you're immune to it for a minute after the effect. But this captivating display is very dangerous because dazzled means essentially everything is concealed to your character, and you're slowed, so it just nerfs everyone around it for a singular action. And if you're dazzled, it can then stealth and sneak attack you for a lot of damage because it's a dragon. It's terrifying. It also gets lunging bite, which allows it to essentially attack at a further range than it normally would be able to, giving it this ability to kind of keep enemies at bay, striking from areas they're not expecting. And that's also really terrifying. This dragon is really good at keeping enemies at bay with its illusions and abilities and not quite knowing where it's at. It also just has the chance to detect illusions just innately. It makes free secret checks whenever it gets near an illusion. So you can't even really trick the trick dragon, which, I mean, makes a lot of sense. Overall, I really love the design of this dragon. I do love how its simplicity in its design really shows in how it operates. It doesn't need to do a lot of different things because what it does really, really well, and it's effective in and outside of combat as well. Overall, probably one of my favorite dragons just by design alone. We are now on to the final dragon, which is the Omen Dragon. A very cool dragon. It's got a bit of a bald cap thing going on there. There might be some relevant mythologies around it, but I'm not particularly familiar with it. I do love its almost wood-like design. I like how the tail kind of swooshes up and splits into branches, and it has the most hand-like ends to its wings. It's a very cool design, being a mix of kind of this mystic kind of blue color along with this more natural kind of wood tendril-esque thing. It's a very cool design. I really like that. I love the horns, especially. A very cool looking dragon. This is the last of our occult dragons, being a family member of our Conspirator Dragon, which, occult dragons all just look really weird, which I very much jive with. I think that's really, really cool. Now, one of the things I really like about these dragons is the interior of their wings has this kind of mirror-like design, and the interior of their wings are showing varieties of different potential futures all the time. And this is one of the big core parts of its overall design, as it is a fortune teller dragon in a sense. And while they've definitely skewed the fortune telling to be more ambiguous, more possible futures rather than like everything set in stone like fates, this dragon is a very interesting play around those concepts. Its reaction is change fate, and the dragon can use this as a reaction when it is being targeted by an attack. So before the dice are rolled, the attacker must roll the dice twice and take the worst result. That is a really big downside, and that's very bad against a dragon, a creature that innately has somewhat more AC, even though I think this is the weakest dragon currently in the book. That it's still a dragon. It's still a dragon, and at higher levels, that reduction in accuracy is going to be felt. So this is a dragon you definitely don't want to fight when you're lower level than it, because that's going to make it a very difficult fight. Now, all this dragon's attacks do mental damage, which is also very hard to resist. So yeah, getting hit by this, it literally gives you flashes and visions in the future, which just throw you so off kilter and just damages you mentally. Another really cool aspect to this thing. And this even translates into its breath attack, which is called Destiny Breath, which is a very weird name for a breath attack, I have to admit. But in a pretty small count, again, this dragon is the weakest. It starts off at level 7, while many of the other ones are like 9 plus. This one is a 20-foot cone that the DC 25 will save, or, well, if you fail, you take 6d6 mental damage. It's a basic save, so half on success. And you are, if you fail the save, you're slowed 1 or 2 on a crit fail for a round as the visions cloud your mind and everything. That's a pretty devastating effect. Probably not one of the most devastating ones. It's weaker and everything like that, but really cool. And again, mental damage, which is very hard to resist. Its last ability for its young dragon phase is prophetic wings. I mentioned before, the interior of its wings give you all kinds of prophetic visions. It can, with a creature of its choice, and this dragon, the lore is very interesting because it has no qualms showing the future to whoever, good or bad. It's a very neutral dragon, and all it cares about is just like the outcomes of fates and stuff like that. Very interesting. But as a 10-minute activity, it can show you the wing, which acts as a pretty much a 4th rank version of the augury spell, which is pretty cool. Except the wings can predict a result up to a day into the future, and the dragon always speaks a few cryptic words relating to the result of the prediction. The dragon can use their wings in this way once per hour, but can only show the future of a specific individual, once per week. In its adult form, and this is also another dragon that has really good progression, in its adult form, the prophetic wings and many of its abilities become better, allowing you to get the 6th rank version of the augury spell, and you can predict events up to a month into the future. And the dragon can view a month ahead in their own wings only once per day, but they can do it for themselves, which is very interesting. They also get an ability called Walk the Timelines, which is very cool. For 2 actions, essentially, once per hour, it splits itself off into 2. And the 2 dragons do, they each move and can strike. They stride or fly from its current space and then take a single action. Doesn't even have to be a strike. If both the actions are attacks, they have the same multi-attack penalty and only count as 1 attack towards its multi-attack penalty, which is pretty insane. And then at the end of this action, it decides which dragon it wants to be, and then it takes that dragon's place. But both the effects happened at the same time. It literally attacks with a different timeline, and then it just chooses which one it wants to be in. And that's pretty cool. That's a really cool effect. And both targets are still attacked or whatever. So this dragon can be like, okay, these guys seem pretty bad. So I'm gonna fly and maybe stride again, or I'm gonna attack. And if the attack goes really well, I'm gonna stay here and stay in the fight. If it didn't go well, I'm just gonna fly away. I think this is such a cool dragon, and because it can always predict its own future, it can and does oftentimes just avoid worse fates, making this one of the most difficult dragons to take down if it's done appropriately. This dragon is also just not one you want to make a foe of, because when you hit its ancient form, it gets impending fate as just a general feature. So whenever the dragon's attack brings their foe, or whenever the dragon's attacks critically hit a foe, or the creature critically fails against the dragon's destiny breath, the target becomes doomed 1 or has its doomed value increased. Meaning that, this thing, the breath weapon especially, is super dangerous, because just failing it will make you doomed 1. And if it crits you with any of its strikes, which, it's a dragon, it probably will, then you're going down against this probably will just result in death. And its prophetic wings get even stronger, giving you the version of the 8th rank augury spell, and it can predict up to a year into the future, and it can view a year into its own future only once per day. So yeah, this thing is pretty cool, and overall, all the dragons are pretty awesome. So that's going to be it for this video. I hope you all liked it. I really like the new ideas that they're coming forth with the Monster Core, and I probably release some other Monster Core material. I know this video is coming out really late. A lot of personal stuff has been happening in life, but hopefully this inspires people to really get into the game, especially run Pathfinder 2nd Edition. When you get such cool, like, one of the cool things about being a GM is the NPCs essentially become like your characters. You can decide what their stories are like, what their fates are like, what their personalities are like. And so when you get such cool dragons like this that you can put into your game or be inspired by the various side notes that they put into the various dragons here in this book, I feel like that's just one of the joys of being a GM, is just the fun of seeing all the new fun, interesting creatures that you get to use against your players or with your players, and create so many really cool encounters and so many cool plot lines and storylines. And many of these dragons really play into a variety of different styles, which I think is really cool. But that's going to be it for me. Thank you all so much for watching. Good luck with your games. Leave the bad luck to me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.